Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best animated films in recent years. The movie premiered in December 2018 for the majority of the world, and it premiered in some countries a month later in January of 2019. However, the film premiered in Japan on March 8, 2019, 3 months after the world premiere. There are many films that are popular worldwide that see a release date in Japan months and sometimes even a year later, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which saw a theatrical release in Japan on March 3, 2023, about a year after its theatrical run in most major theaters in the United States. In today's video, we're going to look at the kinds of obstacles Japan experiences with film distribution. Now, do people in Japan still go to the movie theaters? Absolutely. Animated films are often the biggest draw for ticket sales. Makoto Shinkai's Your Name and Weathering with You helped revive the number of moviegoers in past years. In 2020, Demon Slayer the movie, Mugen Train, which was released in October of that year, managed to draw a high number of moviegoers despite the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on theaters. It became the highest grossing film of all time in Japan in 73 days, earning a gross of 32.48 billion yen, surpassing Spirited Away, which held the record for almost 2 decades. Now, here's the interesting thing. In a top 45 list of Japan's highest grossing films, only 17 of the films were Japanese productions. The rest of the list contained Hollywood movies such as Frozen and Titanic. In fact, Disney films used to draw big crowds to the theaters, so you would assume that it would be really easy to distribute foreign films in Japan, but that is far from the truth. Despite so many films being produced in America, only the blockbusters get to see a Japanese release, and that's because popularity is something that film distributors need in order to market the film. According to FilmDoo's interview with Japanese filmmaker Eiji Uchida and Adam Torrell, the creators of the film Low Life Love, a movie needs to be a major hit with American critics before it can even be considered for an international release in Japan.
だから日本で一番多く見るキャッチコピーはね、全米第一位。そういうのを日本人はやっぱり好きだから。
One of the earliest major examples of the Japanese audience finding American approval started in the 50s with 1954's Godzilla, an anti-nuclear war film that depicts the emergence of a giant dinosaur-looking creature that awakened because of the hydrogen bomb. The movie was released a little less than a decade after World War II ended. Many called the film insensitive and accused the filmmakers for exploiting the widespread devastation that the country had suffered, as well as referencing the Daigofu Kuryomaru incident, which occurred shortly before Godzilla's production, an incident where a fishing boat was showered with radioactive fallout from the US military's 15-megaton Castle Bravo, the name of the hydrogen bomb that was tested around Bikini Atoll. The boat's catch was contaminated, which caused a panic in Japan about the safety of eating fish. Making a reference to it in a movie unsurprisingly upset a lot of people. 2 years later in 1956, the movie was released in the United States as Godzilla, King of the Monsters. And compared to Japan, many critics in America enjoyed the film and its anti-war theme message. The director, Ishiro Honda, believes that Japan's attitude about the film changed when they heard it was a critical success in the United States. The first film critics to appreciate Godzilla were those in the US. When Godzilla was released as Godzilla, King of the Monsters in 1956, the critics said things such as, "For the start, this film frankly depicts the horrors of the atomic bomb," and by these evaluations, the assessment began to impact critics in Japan and has changed their opinion over the years. Honda explained. Producer Torrell also points out how Japan has no critics, or rather, any notable critics, who are able to speak about how bad or good a film is in order to help promote a film. Whereas, the English-speaking world relies on sites such as Rotten Tomatoes that collects reviews and calculates overall scores for films. Companies will utilize the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes to promote their films by featuring them in commercials to drive more moviegoers. But being called the #1 film in America is only the first part of distributing a film in Japan. The next step is how you market the film to the Japanese audience. Many distributors in Japan do have their own plug-and-play method of marketing a film, but some films require additional thinking. A 1992 article published in the Los Angeles Times gives us a lot of insight about movie distribution in Japan, and the different types of hurdles companies need to overcome in order to advertise Hollywood films. The film Basic Instincts generated controversy due to its sexually explicit content, violence, and depiction of homosexual relationships, something that is hard to market to a largely conservative female audience. Since the internet wasn't really a thing yet at the time, the controversy surrounding the film wasn't known worldwide, which allowed distributors to be more strategic in their marketing tactics. Film distributors Nippon Herald retitled the film to Smile of Ice, and removed any mention of the sexual scenes widely discussed among the Western audience to focus on the character Catherine Trammell, played by Sharon Stone. You have to get the women talking about a film, noting that with men working long hours, 70% of the typical movie audience is women, mostly unmarried. Nippon Herald's Hiro Izumi said, Captain America Civil War was promoted as a film about friendship. The tagline in Japanese posters read, "Friendships, tearing apart friendships." The Japanese trailer really makes it look like a heated drama between men. Check it out. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse released 3 months after it premiered in the United States. Japan definitely knows who Spider-Man is, thanks to superheroes having such a huge presence in pop culture today. But they're familiar with Peter Parker being Spider-Man and not Miles Morales. So how did they promote this film in Japan? By featuring a lot of Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and by creating a dubbed version of the film that features some of Japan's most prominent voice actors. Kenshi Ono as Miles Morales, Yuki Aoi as Gwen Stacy, and Mamoru Miyano as Peter B. Parker. Of the 3 voice actors, Miyano's the one with the most star power, so it makes sense that he's cast as the Spider-Man everybody knows. The Japanese trailer of the film spells each voice actor's name out in big text, and it also includes the line, "With great power comes great responsibility." But despite it having such a worldwide success, and the promotion it had, the film premiered in only 313 theaters across the country, despite Japan having more than 2,000 theaters. And why is this? Some of the oldest film studios, like Toho and Shochiku, control virtually all of the film distribution in the country because they own the majority of the theaters in Japan. And because of that, only a fraction of the theaters are allowed to screen foreign films alongside domestic films. The reason is simply because these studios want to screen their own productions regardless of its quality. Japan's domestic industry has a 40% share of the film market, so it makes sense that they want to promote more of their movies over foreign films in order to reap the profits. Hollywood blockbusters tend to drive more ticket sales compared to Japanese films, but Japanese studios make more money screening domestic films. Movie theaters showing American movies bring in more customers, but if you made the film yourself, you get higher profits showing your own films, says Tatsuo Meguro, board director in charge of movie theaters at Shochiku. Hollywood's dominance of Japanese cinema reached its peak when the live-action adaptation of J.K. Rowling's book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, topped the year's box office rankings, and the foreign film market share hit a record of 72.9%, according to figures compiled by the Motion Picture Producers Association of Japan. But that trend began to decline as the years passed, and eventually plummeted at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, where all of Hollywood's distribution stopped for an interim period. Hollywood films used to make up a lot of Japan's box office revenue, dominating the box office revenue internationally, but in recent years, that actually isn't the case. There's been a decline in American film presence in Japanese cinema, and it's possible that Japanese moviegoers are no longer interested in Hollywood. Or maybe it's thanks to streaming services, such as Disney+. Disney has become a leader in shortening the theatrical window. You don't have to wait long for their films to be on Disney+, Hiro Otaka says. In contrast, however, film distribution of Japanese movies, in America, is a different story, which I may get to in a different video. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.